Next point, emotions and clear thinking. So while I kind of like the character Spock in the old Star Trek series, I mean, I grew up as a kid in the 60s when the original Star Trek with, Leonard Nimoy and that whole gang was on TV. And yeah, I kind of like Spock, but you know what? In another way, there was some part of me, especially as I got older, that really cringes when I think of Spock because he is not who we should be seeking to embody. In order to think clearly, you need to be able to also feel deeply. They go together. If you can't feel deeply, you're also not going to be able to think clearly. You don't know what things mean to you. You don't have key information about the meaning of things that are out there to you and your life internally. Your emotions really are an instantaneous summing up of what the meaning of what's out there that you're encountering is to you and your values. And to divide it in the most crude way, you can think of positive emotions or negative emotions. You're encountering something that is either pro your values or anti your values. Things that are anti your values, you feel some negative emotion, either fear or disgust or anger or something like that. Something that is pro your values, you feel attraction, you feel love, you feel a warm, squishy feeling in a whole bunch of different ways depending on the context. But what I want to get across is the idea that if you can't think clearly, it is probably going together with you can't feel deeply. Feeling deeply means you haven't engaged, hopefully, in too much of this thing we call repression. So repression operates by blocking both of these at the same time. Repression is an automatic response that happens with practice, unfortunate practice on your part. We're going to get to that in a minute. Okay, so let me just go on here. Okay, our mind and our senses, you know what? It's all we've got. It's all anybody's got. So you might be tempted to think, well, I don't know if I trust my mind. I'll just trust this guru over here. Well, you know what? There's a ton of different gurus out there, and they can have their own psychological reasons for wanting your obedience, maybe to allay their own anxieties. The more people, the more followers they get, the more they think, gee, I wasn't really sure that this is all true, but look at how many people believe me. I guess maybe it is true, and then maybe I can relax a little bit. That can be one motivation. There can be a whole bunch of motivations. I mean, our president is another. Anyway, I won't talk about that. But anyway, even if there are all these different gurus, you're the one who has to decide which one you're going to trust. You really can't avoid the responsibility for thought, for using your mind. Okay? There's just no way around it. So you don't want to be like the guy on the right here. And gurus, if they really value you and they really want to encourage your healthy growth, then they will encourage the healthy use of your mind. And they will be happy with your skepticism, and they'll be happy to address it and to help you get the light bulb of real understanding. They won't seek to just browbeat you with intimidation or fear or, seduction in other ways. Yeah, plenty of motivations out there for false gurus to try and turn you in exactly the opposite direction, which is blind obedience. And it's resulted in a lot of tragedy over the many centuries that we have been around. So the authoritarian mindset, this is not what we want. I hope you don't come to think of me as an authoritarian. Think of me as somebody who has knowledge that probably some of you don't have yet, certainly in astronomy, and that I can be a resource, but, I could be wrong on stuff too. And, I'm certainly not infallible. I can guarantee you that. I've certainly made my share of mistakes. Yeah, I'm going to skip that slide, actually. So realize the sensitivity of my task as we talk about science, okay? It's unfortunate that in today's world, it seems that higher education, which in my youth was a place where academic freedom and the willingness to challenge what you thought was true with evidence and reason and let evidence lead the verdict. And you were growing in not just, job skills, but you're growing in deep ways, a truly liberal arts education. In fact, when I was your age, the University of California offered a free education. You could go to UC for free. Actually, that's not quite true. That ended quite a little bit before I got to college, so I had to pay for college, but I didn't have to pay as much as you guys are, so it was doable. Yeah, so what I was going to say was, unfortunately, it seems that teaching has degenerated in too many cases into mere memorization of factoids. That is not learning. Learning is not memorizing factoids. Learning is getting the light bulb. Learning how to use your mind so that you can actually go out and then get new knowledge on your own. Yeah, and then there's the delicate connection with religion, and I've decided I'm not going to talk about religion in this class, but I will mention a couple of things here, and we are going to touch on religion a little bit when we get to the history of astronomy, because we kind of have to. But I just want to say the vast majority of scientists are secular humanists. Okay, that means they're not believers in a God. The U.S. is pretty unusual among Western countries, really any of the developed countries, not just Western, in being so religious. We're really kind of off-scale religious. It's very unusual. You might not quite realize that, but you go to any other Western country and the strength of religion is much less than the developed countries. So it makes it a little awkward because science, of course, is a global thing. And it's kind of awkward living, frankly, in the United States these days. So I would ask you only to open your minds with a sincere desire to grasp understanding in an atmosphere of true and benevolent academic freedom. So I respect and I welcome all students, but I do need to tell you that ideas are not the same as people. We welcome all people. I don't care what your belief system is. But not all ideas are equally beneficial to human ethics, to human values, genuine human well-being. Okay? And so, yeah, and I would ask you to respect your fellow students and don't seek to shut down inquiry by forcing your personal wants above anyone else's. Probably worth saying. Yeah, sharp feeling of dissonance. Okay, I talked about that as the clashing feeling earlier. So we kind of covered that. So I want to distinguish the light bulb from a different feeling, which also feels sort of good, but in a very different way. Confirmation bias. So if you go into a situation of new learning and you find a bit of fear, you're feeling some anxiety, some fear as this new knowledge is being laid out to you. And then you find that the new knowledge or the new ideas, whether they're knowledge or not, actually is in confirmation of your pre-existing ideas. Then you may feel a certain thing we'll just call relief. Okay, so you felt fear and then you felt relief. That is a signal that what you're really seeing is confirmation bias in action. You're getting your biases confirmed by whatever is out there. And the fear comes out of, well, maybe they're not going to confirm what I want. Really, a very healthy place to be instead is just out and out curiosity. Oh, wow, this person, this book, this thing has something new to say about something I'm really interested in. Like for me right now, I'm really interested in understanding the nature of free will. Do we even have free will? Something I never really asked until relatively recently. It's kind of a pretty darn important question. There are actually a lot of scientists who believe we don't. But I know that I really, really want to understand that. So I don't approach it I just notice internally. I monitor my internal feelings as maybe I see a YouTube that I want to, oh, wow. There's a YouTube on free will. Looks like it's from some pretty good people. I want to listen to this. And I actually feel curiosity. I want to listen rather than feeling, oh, I don't know if I want to listen to this. What if they're going to throw cold water on my, my prejudices, my bias, my belief systems, whatever. Yeah, that's a sign. That's not a good sign. So one way to put the things I'm trying to get across is there's only one reality. Often at this point, students will come in and say, wait a minute, Rick, everybody has their own reality. Well, that's not a good use of the word reality. And in fact, certain teachers or certain gurus out there who use terms like that, I get a little annoyed with, I have to tell you. And we'll see why in a minute. But first of all, there's this great quote from the author of Blade Runner. Reality is that which, when you stop believing in it, doesn't go away. I love that quote. Yeah, because you know what? If there was more than one reality, what is that saying? It's saying that contradictions exist. It means that there are things out there that are absolutely going to be forbidden from you from ever understanding. And that's a way of saying your brain doesn't work. Whereas history shows that when we're confronted by things that are actually pretty puzzling, if we just keep at it, if we just keep working on it, that understanding will come. Now, some of you might be thinking, but Rick, what about quantum mechanics? We still don't really understand quantum mechanics. In fact, even the great Richard Feynman, whom you admire so much, he once said, if you think you understand quantum mechanics, you don't understand quantum mechanics. Another great Richard Feynman quote. Yeah, okay, but you know what? I mean, nobody knows this better than Feynman. We understand the mathematics and we understand the rules of quantum mechanics extremely well. It predicts experiments right down to the 13th decimal place, as far as we've been able to test it. Now, interpreting that in plain ordinary language is telling us that, yeah, reality at the deepest, smallest, tiniest level is really bizarre. Well, that's okay. It's fun to try and figure it out. But you know what? If somebody tried to tell you with authoritarian might, 2 plus 2 is 4, and 2 plus 2 is 5. Those are both true. Okay, you know what? That's a contradiction. That's a contradiction because we're going to define 2, and we're going to define 4, and we're going to define 5, and we're going to define plus, and we're going to define equals. And within those definitions, that just plain ain't true. I'm sorry. 2 plus 2 is not both 4 and 5 at the same time. So contradictions don't exist. There's one reality. Claiming multiple realities is self-contradictory. It says your brain doesn't work, but if your brain doesn't work, then how can you even trust the very claim that there's more than one reality? So the meaning of the word reality was set long ago by the great philosophers, and that's the reality we want to keep. That which actually exists. Now you might say, well, Rick, how do we know we aren't just living in the matrix? Maybe we're all just hooked up to some, plumbing somewhere, and we actually, all this that we think is around us isn't really around us. Well, okay, so you can't disprove that. But there is very elegant disproof, short of the matrix, okay? So, yeah, the matrix is a bit of a mind bender. Okay, I'm going to assume that we're not in the matrix, okay, people? Will you grant me that? We don't live in the matrix? Sage, I see you not quite sure. Will you give me that? We don't live in the matrix?
I don't know.
You don't know? All right, well. Let's just assume we don't live in the matrix. Okay, if we live in the matrix, then yeah, we can't. Then we know nothing. Then I guess just enjoy it. Like that one guy, remember, who betrayed everybody else? Anyway, we don't have to go there. It is true, though, that we all have our own perceptions and conceptions of reality. So I invented a very ugly word, PACOR, and that is your own perceptions and conceptions of reality. You say, well, Rick, that's an ugly word. Yeah, I know. Sorry, the beautiful word reality is already taken. You can't have it. The truth that there's one reality is really to say that our own individual PACORs, which do differ, our experiences all differ, so our PACORs are all going to differ. But our goal to have a good life is really to have our PACOR match as well as possible the actual one true reality. Then you're going to be making decisions that are most harmonious with what's actually true and probably making real progress instead of spinning your wheels. So here's why I get annoyed with this other use for the word reality. Oh, we all have our own realities. In one sense, you might say, oh, Rick, it's just poetic. Don't get all bent out of shape. But here's the thing. There's this subtle meaning that gets transmitted, and that is, oh, well, there is no reality, Rick. It's all just opinion. And it's often a way to try and sneak in some ideas that actually don't pass muster when you look at them carefully. And the only way they can sneak them in is just say, well, nobody knows anything. And so my opinion is just as good as yours. And by the way, here's my opinion. And it's something way out in the wild blue yonder that actually violates everything that we have tested. And it really doesn't pass snuff at all. But the only way they could get it in is to think, well, everybody's opinion is just as good as everybody else's. You should definitely listen to opinions you haven't heard before, but you might not have to listen to them very long before you realize, oh, wait a minute, that's wrong. Here's why. And then you explain to where you heard that opinion why it's disagreeing with actual evidence. But you know what? In the brave new America of today, everything is labeled as fake news, thereby discouraging you from trying to make distinctions between what's real and what's fake. See what you gain by this fake news thing? You just give up. You just give up and you just distrust everybody. But that means the news that is real, you're also distrusting. And then the people who are trying to convince you of fake news, they're already halfway to their goal because you've given up. Language is distorted to the breaking point and delivered as if it's the honest truth. It's the big lie technique, which was used so prominently by Joseph Goebbels in Adolf Hitler's Germany. And it's returning to 21st century America, I'm so sad to say. Okay, there's an elegant disproof that there is that there's no reality, only opinion. Okay, we can disprove that. I'm going to look at my watch. Okay, can somebody promise to tell me at 7:30? That's only 6 minutes from now. That Rick, we need a break. So I do owe you a break. I owe you a break every mid-class. So from 7:30 to 7:43 or thereabouts, we'll take a break. But we're not quite there yet. It's 7:24 by my watch. Yeah, so life requires constant maintenance and energy. Constant maintenance and energy. It's a fight against the second law of thermodynamics, which is the fact that everything tends to a greater and greater disorder just because of the number of atomic quantum states that are in a disordered versus an ordered way. That's the second law of thermodynamics. If you have already had a little science, it's kind of a fun thing. You can look and read about that. So if we need constant energy just to survive, we have to interact with the outer world, the world beyond our skin to get that energy. And that means we have to succeed. We have to actually know something about the outer world in order to interact with it and get our sustenance, food, water, shelter, etc. Okay, so that's my elegant disproof that is all just opinion. We actually do know things. That's not to say, again, that everything can be understood easily and without effort and automatically and with never worry about being wrong. nature doesn't give us that, okay? You have to accept the risk that you might be wrong, and you have to accept the effort of actually trying to make your mind work. But if you do it, and you do it well, you'll find it's fun. It's rewarding. It's not a chore. It's actually a lot of fun. This is even true in the realm of ethics. So many would have you believe the notion that we should never judge cultural values, lest we be accused of discrimination and offend someone who may be attached to them. But here's the thing. Humans really do have a specific nature driven genetically for our optimal fitness in the real, external, objective world. There are therefore specific requirements we have in order for optimum happiness and well-being. Okay, we can't eat rocks. Okay, we can't drink ocean water. To just do a couple of obvious examples, we need specific things for our well-being, and these have to be the proper framework for ethics. Ethics can't be just any old thing that you want. Don't leave yourself helpless against someone who says, well, you know, my ethics says that we ought to take the Jews and just put them all in ovens and bake them. You know, my ethics says that we all just ought to, you know, we ought to just shoot all black people. Okay? No. Don't leave yourself at the helpless mercy of saying, well, gee, I don't really think so, but you know what? I don't want to tell you that you might be wrong because, I don't know, that's discriminating and being judgmental against you. You know what? Sometimes it's time to be judgmental and discriminating in the proper sense of the word. There are a lot of things that don't impact on human welfare. Chocolate or vanilla, straight or rainbow, black or white. And therefore, they're neither moral nor immoral. But it would be absurd to argue that we shouldn't discriminate, quote unquote, against Nazi Germany fascism, feeling it's merely engaging in an alternate cultural choice, and we shouldn't be judgmental. Well, you know what? Proper human well-being says we should be judgmental, and we should put an end to it. I hope nobody disagrees with me on that. But again, the base for ethics needs to be an external, observable, and rational human well-being, human welfare. And that doesn't mean you satisfying a temporary itch, you know, like I'm mad and I'd rather just go shoot this person right now. Okay? That is not engaging the need for happiness. That is that's different. Okay, so happiness involves a long-term view of your life, not immediate gratification, which actually hurts your life.
I have a question.
Question, yes.
Because I looked it up and it said psychopaths are born into this world, so their morals wouldn't be the same as someone with feelings, I'd say, or someone who, you know, like
well, doesn't that play into the whole thing you were talking about, that you need to have emotions for a clear mind as well?
Yeah.
And if someone has psychopathy, they don't have access to their range of emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't, well, I would say that psychopaths can be either born or they can be made. Mm-hmm. You can, by your own actions, drive yourself towards psychopathic tendencies. If you violate your own honorable needs enough, you can turn yourself against yourself and turn psychopathic. How can I pause the recording? Pause recording.